It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. Yes, breaking down for you the Australian property market. Always a lot to stay ahead of when it comes to any property market throughout the country, no matter where you are. If you don't keep up, you run that risk of falling behind market trends, which is so important, as well as the analysis and projected forecast in the current real estate cycle. If you'd like to get in touch, our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Of course, we'd always love to hear from you. It is a Tuesday, February the 17th. Always nice to get Monday out of the way. I thought this morning we would just do a bit of a refresher on what a buyer's agent does, especially a buyer's agent in Sydney. They are a licensed property professional who works exclusively for the buyer, not the seller. So their point of difference is very different. They provide market insights, also suburb research, negotiation expertise, and access to off-market listings, typically unseen by the public. And I put the caveat in here, sometimes that can be smoke and mirrors, just depending on who you are dealing with. You know, in a very competitive Sydney market with limited stock and these very fast auctions, they do help buyers save time, reduce emotional decision-making, and secure properties, sometimes at better prices based on strategy rather than impulse. But you've got to choose very, very wisely, because not all buyer's agents are, shall we say, specialised, professional, or up to the task of representation in these multi-million-dollar deals. Yes, for a multitude of reasons. Now, let's take you to Sydney and catch up with somebody who we recommend as a buyer's agent. That is Michelle May. What an introduction.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know what else I could add, really. That's a very well-versed outline of exactly what it is that we do.
Well, you've got plenty of experience here, because buyer behaviour and competitive bidding trends, it is forcing buyers to rethink strategies and underscoring the demand for expert advocacy, and that's where you come in. But as I say, they're just not all the same, and you would see that in Sydney. You would hear the stories, know the people that shouldn't be doing it, but are.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely right. I think the buzzword of what are you going to be when you grow up is currently buyer's agent, because I've been seeing them pop up like mushrooms. You're certainly right. They're not all made equal, and there's quite a few of them that really should not be charging any buyers for the service that they're offering.
Yeah, there are these wide range of services, as I talk about, from boutique, personalised search and negotiations to fixed fee or premium concierge models, reinforcing that buyer's agents are an established part of today's purchasing landscape, none more so than in Sydney. We talk about the price point of Sydney. I think it's a little like the bees to the honey pot. It's such a big market. There is so many big deals that are being made. And when people decide, I'm going to become a buyer's agent, it becomes a sort of a no-brainer. Let's go to Sydney.
Yeah. Buyers sometimes fail to understand when it comes to selecting a buyer's agent. It's not just about them having a social media presence or a schmick website. Those are not the reasons why you should be picking your buyer's agent. You should be picking your buyer's agent on their expertise. A buyer's agent should not be charging you money to practice their skills on your search, their negotiation skills on your house purchase, because you're going to be spending an enormous amount of money on the property itself. So you need a buyer's agent who understands the nuances of that the micro market, because Sydney, as you said, is made up of many different markets. Understanding how the agents work as well, having those relationships in place so they can leverage those relationships to help the client understand, okay, well, this agent is a massive deal doer. We need to be quick. Let's get you front and center. Let's get you ready to transact as soon as we get the green light from the agents, as opposed to other agents where you know they can't do a deal to save themselves and you have to wait till auction. A new buyer's agent or someone who has less than 5 years of experience simply should not be calling themselves an expert, and certainly should not be let out on their own claiming that they're going to help you buy better. In most cases, these people are just really out just to line their own pockets.
I got to use this analogy. You might relate to this, Michelle, because part of the problem is they don't have the experience. They don't know a lot of the market trends in suburbs around Sydney. Now, years ago, I actually used to work in talkback radio. You know, people would ring up and they'd be talking about something. A talkback host never knows everything. Of course they don't. And this is what I used to do, like any talkback person would do, is if you don't know the subject, you'd say, well, that's interesting. Why do you say that? And you get them to talk to you, and then you kind of form an opinion by the time they have spoken enough about the subject, and you can form something that you can give them back. And I think this analogy, Michelle, is a little like some of these buyer's agents. They don't know. They go in, they talk to these clients, potential clients. They ask them a ton of questions, and they're actually being informed by the people that are going to pay them.
Or in other cases, they end up following people like myself on social media and then replicate the information that I give to my audience and pretend it's their own, you know. Yes, I see that all the time. And to be honest with you, it's a very scary thing for me in this industry because, you know, people are going to think that we are all the same and we are not worth, you know, paying for and sharing our expertise with the clients. So I think as a buyer, it's very important that you do your research up front and understand how long the buyer's agent has been a buyer's agent in that particular area. The quality of properties that they purchase is very, very important. Like, part of my job is to actually help the client walk away from a property that turns out to be subpar because, for example, we found something in the building and pest or in the strata report. And particularly those first home buyers are very vulnerable to that. You know, they buy with their eyes as opposed to, and with their emotion, as opposed to really understanding the rigorous due diligence a property needs to go through and stand up with, and particularly off markets as well, in order to sink your hard-earned money into this. So a buyer's agent who can talk you through their recent purchases and justify why they paid as much as they did for this one and walked away from that one, I think that would be the starting point for me if I was looking to engage a buyer's agent.
So be very, very wary and don't get sucked in if somebody's social media looks fantastic. A lot of these pyramid selling concepts sort of act in the same way. You know, they look really great from the outside. Okay, that is enough about the buyer's agents. Let's shift gears. I want to talk to you about Westpac because they recently released buyer sentiment and it's a little bit sort of underwater somewhat.
Yeah, it's a very, when I first read it, it was a bit confusing, to be honest, because they're saying buyers increasingly believe that house prices will keep rising. Fewer think it's a good time to buy. The time to buy a dwelling, the index dropped 6.3%. Overall consumer sentiment fell by nearly 3% as well. But the expectations are, you know, the highest in 15 years to say, yes, prices are still going to go up. 80% of consumers, in fact, think that those rises are going to continue for the next 12 months. It's a bit of a mixed bag here, I think.
And median house prices in Sydney especially are falling. We spoke to Nicola Powell from Domain last week with regard to that.
And some of these falls are double digits. And what that really illustrates is there is no one single unit market in Sydney or in any of our major capital cities. And for me, if you're a buyer out there, it really highlights that you really need to have a deep understanding of what is the suburb or the area that you're purchasing into, what's the pipeline for supply, because we know high levels of supply can change a price point, what's happening in that overall development space, not only just in residential, but also commercial infrastructure. These can all affect price points. but also, what you're actually buying as well, because you can purchase in a suburb and actually the offering can be quite different just down the road. Like, for example, we know that heritage apartments have a tight following and buyers are willing to pay a premium for a heritage style apartment. And you tend to find that heritage apartments also are larger, they have higher ceilings. So I think it is all about knowing your market.
We are more than just a real estate podcast. We cover a multitude of subjects, including property data, current buyer-seller sentiment, and the mood of the market. Follow each week all of the main talking points and know your property. Don't forget to subscribe. We have so many episodes, all designed to help you better understand the constantly evolving and dynamically changing real estate property market.
Something that you're seeing in the trenches.
Well, yeah, but my caution, I think, always is when it comes to looking at median prices is that you really need to understand the data that you are looking at. What became clear in that report as well is that, for example, in some cases in these suburbs, it is because there have been, in the apartment median price, for example, there have been an increased number of one-bedroom sales as opposed to two-bedroom sales. So, of course, that is going to drag down the median price. So it doesn't always indicate a weaker suburb as such. It could also be because we're going from a very small data pool overall. When you're looking at medians, the more sales you have, the more robust that number and the more reliable that number is going to be. It could also be because there's been a high amount of development that will drag down prices somewhat as well. So I think whilst that, could inspire hope and aspiration for buyers out there thinking, gosh, I'm going to get a bargain because prices have fallen, you really need to look at this data from all angles to really understand what is going on the ground.
Yes, the aspirations for buyers when they start reading some of this material. Tell me, how busy have you been since coming back after the Christmas New Year period? Is it busy for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think no different to any other year. Every year after Christmas and the summer school holidays, people have been starved of stock. And so they reach out to people like myself to go, hey, we need your help because maybe we're on a deadline or whatever the case may be. So, and they want to start afresh. Maybe they haven't bought in the year previous, gave up, gave themselves, a good shake off and go ready to go again in 2026. So yes, we're certainly very busy, even with, this buyer sentiment report saying people are a little bit depressed about it, but those that are ready to buy are still raring to go, particularly in that sub $1.5 million bracket.
Yeah, well, yesterday we were talking to Monica too in the luxury market in Sydney, and she has never been busier. All right, great to catch up with you there, Michelle. Enjoy your Tuesday, and yes, buyer beware when it comes to buyer's agents.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs, and hidden gems.
We're talking about 45,000 to 92,000 per square meters. Eastern suburbs of Sydney, in most months, some incredible records. Recently, Greg, it's funny thing is like Gold Coast is actually upcoming. Incredible. We're talking about $30 million in Gold Coast.
Looking at something like $50 million for your clients, a $50 million property, you're struggling. Nothing on the market to find.
Yes, we did a Google search or domain real estate search for anything over $50 million. There's nothing on the market, but it doesn't mean there's no buyers or sellers. So, in our book at the moment, we have quite a few, almost $400 million. So one of them has a $44.5 million to about $150 million. So the vendor doesn't want to go on the market. And the buyer doesn't want to buy from the market because they know who is the seller and we know who's the seller and who is the buyer.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.